Welcome back to another episode of In the Kitchen with Baker Girl. Thank you, Jesus. It is another beautiful day to be in the kitchen. Today, we will be doing some Vanilla Petit Fours as part one of our Ladies Who Brunch series. Now, this was a selection of small miniature desserts I did for a ladies' brunch, and I'm starting off with my Vanilla Petit Fours. So I have my vanilla sheet cake that I've already baked, and I wrapped it in plastic wrap to keep it nice and moist, and I'm just measuring it into equal small squares, and the size of your petit four really depends on how big or how small you want it to be. Obviously, it's supposed to be petite, so you want to keep it to the small size, but they don't have to be extremely tiny. So I have my cake knife, and I've measured off all my squares into equal pieces. Now I'm just cutting it into squares, and it's easier if you take a small knife and score it out before you take your actual cutting knife and cut it out. And it would be ideal if you could use a smooth bladed knife. That is, unless your serrated knife is very sharp. Now, my serrated knife is very sharp. I only use it for cakes and bread, so it stays very sharp. But if your knife is not quite so sharp, use a straight bladed knife. Now I'm transferring each of my squares to a rack lined baking sheet. And I'm leaving some space in between each square because when we pour our glaze on, we want to make sure that there's room and your cakes don't stick together. And I'm going to chill these in the freezer for about 20 minutes. Now here I have my vanilla fondant icing. This is an icing that is specially made for Petit Fours. So it's a mixture of butter, there's confectioner's sugar, there's some corn syrup, and there is also a little bit of just a pinch of salt to make the flavors sing. And you melt all of that over a double boiler. And you bring it to a certain temperature. The ideal temperature is between 100 degrees and 115 degrees. And you do want to mind your temperatures for this, because if the glaze is too warm, it will just run right off the cakes. If the glaze is too cold, it will kind of gum up and be difficult to spread evenly. And I took a small amount of it because I wanted some to be pink, because we're talking about cuteness. So I took a small amount of my glaze, and I added just a few drops of pink food coloring. You can use any color you like. For this one, I just chose pink. And these also have been chilled in the freezer, and this is the first coat, and you'll need about 2 to 3 good coats just to make sure that your glaze is perfectly even and smooth. So here it is. I'm actually coming in with the final coat, which is the third coat. And you need way more fondant glaze than you realize. So always make extra of that glaze because it takes quite a bit of it, especially if you're making several Petit Fours. Now here I'm transferring them to cupcake liners. This makes it easy to transport and easy for the hostess to serve than if you put them on just a regular cake board or something like that. It makes your life easier because you can decorate them individually more easier, and it also makes the hostess life easier too. So I'm removing them from the rack and transferring them to my cupcake liners, and they do kind of stick around the bottom a little bit. That's to be expected because the glaze does harden once you let them chill. That's not a problem. You're going to put them on the cupcake liners, so you really won't notice. Now, I took some of my glaze. Actually, this is not glaze. This is buttercream. And I divided my buttercream into sections, and I dyed each batch. Sorry, not sections, batch. I dyed each batch different colors, and the colors simply depend on what colors you want. I have some green, some pink, and some yellow. And then I left a good amount white. And you always want to start off with small amounts of your colored buttercream and leave your main batch white. So if you need more, you can always go back to your main batch of white and add a little bit more food coloring and make another batch of color if you need to. And I'm just taking my time piping on my cute tiny flowers, and I'm using a small star tip, a small open star tip, and a small closed star tip. And then I also have a small round tip and a small leaf tip. And having a coupler on your piping bag, and I have couplers on my piping bags, it makes life easier if you get into the middle of, decorating something and you decide you want to change up your piping tips. Not having to go get another piping bag and fill it with color makes life a lot easier. So a good rule of thumb is always add a coupler to your piping bag. Now here I'm using a few pink edible pearls. You can find these in the cake decorating section, or you can find them on Amazon. And I'm adding, these are some tiny royal icing roses that I'm adding. And they are very small, and they're firm. So it's not like the buttercream that, if you touch it, it will squish. These are small royal icing roses. And you want to make sure that you kind of make each cake or each petit four slightly different than the other. Some uniformity is a good thing, but you always want to kind of swap it, switch it up a little bit, so that unless the hostess requests everything to be exactly the same, you always want a little difference, to make each one stand out, because each person that's going to get a cake, each one will be unique. So if possible, try to make, maybe stick with maybe 4 different styles and switch it up between each petit four, just to make sure that, they all look a little unique and a little different from one another. And I'm just piping on some tiny green leaves. Now my green piping bag is the only one that I don't add a coupler to, and that's because I strictly just keep it for the green leaf piping. So there's no need to worry about, I'm not going to pipe a green flower. Just green leaves is I just stick with that one. So that's the only one I didn't put a coupler on. And if you need to chill these in between decorating them, you can always keep some in the refrigerator to stay chilled while you're working on the others. Keep some out and some in the refrigerator, especially if it's a warm day. This fondant glaze doesn't really soften a lot once it's firmed up on your mini cakes. But if it's a very warm day, I would always keep the most amount in the refrigerator and just, bring out, say 4 or 5, so your glaze doesn't start to, get a little too soft or something. Also, it makes the little flowers stick better onto the glaze if it's cool, onto the cake if it's cooled. And this is the fun part. You can have so much fun decorating these little things, and I get carried away because this is like, yay, this is my favorite part. And that is the vanilla ones all done and set aside. Now I'm switching to my pink ones, and I have to say the pink ones were actually my favorite. I am not a massive fan of pink, mind you, but when it comes to cakes and decorating, I do like to work with pink. Now for some of these, I took some of the white fondant glaze that I had left over. I put it in a piping bag. I snipped off a tiny little piece off the piping bag, and I just drizzled some cute little zigzags and swirly things on top, and then just topped it with some white tiny edible pearls, and then some pink tiny edible pearls. And that's just for a few of them. As I say, some uniqueness is a good thing. And then I added a tiny drop of that white fondant glaze to the center of one, and I'm adding a tiny white royal icing rose, and then just piping some little cute petals and tiny little cute flowers around it. and a few little leaves. And set that one aside and move on to the next one. And this can be completely random. You don't have to sit down and plan this sort of thing, as you start working. The Lord bring all these good ideas to your mind, or do this or do that. Serendipity is a good thing when it comes to baking, because everything isn't always planned, unless your customer specifically wants certain things. But with Petit Fours or any miniature desserts, those last minute ideas of, oh, hey, well, let's try this, that works. And the more you do of things like this, and the more decorating that you do, the more different little ideas you'll have. Now, I do want to say that Petit Fours take some time. These are not quick and easy desserts. They actually take, in some cases, more time than an actual full cake. And here we are, all done. Oh, they look so cute. Thank you, Jesus. They are so cute. And the ladies were so tickled. So this is part 1. Stay tuned for part 2. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Leave us a comment, and the good Lord willing, I will see you again in the next video. Take care, guys. Bye.